You
Yes.
explain it. What's the difference between the law of emergence versus the law of attraction? Because this is your specialty.
Yeah, and I used to do talks, the unattractive side of the law of attraction and deal with that. And basically, I had been trying to improve my self-help, self-improvement for many years before I had this breakdown, near-death experience. First, I almost died of an overdose. And that was, I'd spent maybe a decade in self-improvement.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however, emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. There's a particular kind of person who spends their early life chasing intelligence through computers and code, and then has a single moment that tears all of that apart and asks an entirely different question. Not what can I build, but what am I? Not how do I optimize, but what does it mean to be human? For today's guest, that moment came at the edge of death. Welcome back to the Give a Heck podcast. I'm Dwight Heck, and this show exists to help you live life on purpose and not by accident. My guest today has spent decades answering the questions that his near-death experience forced him to ask. Derek Rydall grew up as a coder. He was deep in technology, systems, logic, and the early world of computing before any of us were talking about artificial intelligence. That same curiosity about how things work took him from computers to the brain, from the brain to the mind, and eventually to something far bigger than either. He is a best-selling author of multiple books, including Emergence and The Abundance Project, and his podcast, the same name, has reached millions of downloads around the world. His work has reached coaches, entrepreneurs, and creatives. And now, at a moment when the world is wrestling with artificial intelligence means for human beings, he has written a book that pulls everything together, a whole new human. 10 ways we must evolve to survive and thrive in the AI age was published in February of this year. It makes a case most people have not heard of yet that the real threat of AI is not the machines will replace us, it is that we will become more like them. Then in outsourcing, outthinking our creativity, our judgment, and our intuition to technology, we lose the very qualities that make us human. And that's the answer is not to compete with machines, but to become more fully, deeply, irreplaceably ourselves. He has lived that message through things no book could manufacture, a near-death experience, the loss of fortune, the death of a child. What he knows about transformation is not theoretical. It is reality. Derek, welcome to the Give a Heck podcast. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. There's nothing left to say. You pretty much said it all.
I get told by people your bios are too long, and I have people
No,
say,
it's
I love it.
great.
I love when people, I didn't realize how good I sounded when they tell me that, like, I didn't realize until somebody
Right.
talked about me.
Right.
Usually I get people give me just a little blurb. One of the things though, as I was reading your bio, I don't know why it didn't click in. Before I got into finance 25 years ago, I was a computer consultant for over 10 years, right? I was a GX certified global internet security specialist. I built servers. I dealt a lot of work with corporations. So
Mm,
we have some commonalities, my friend.
mm,
So I came
yes.
from the IT world, which is really cool. But it isn't about me. I just thought I'd interject and add that because sometimes I
Good
think
to know.
I honestly believe people come into our lives for us. Things don't happen to us, they happen for us. And I believe
Absolutely.
we were meant to get connected together. So,
Right.
Derek,
I always love starting at the beginning, like I mentioned prior to hitting record. I mean, the real beginning, because I genuinely believe the trials and struggles and the moments that shaped us growing up really are really our starting point. And we don't give it
Yes.
enough credit. And it helps the listeners and others, including yourself. Sometimes people realize that when they're telling me stuff, I've never talked about this before. And it creates that better connection. So do me a favor, Derek. Share whatever you feel comfortable about from your earliest recollections to now.
Yeah, I mean, I can recollect all the way back to being born practically because I've done a lot of deep regression therapy. I was 2.5 months premature,
Oh,
and
wow.
I can remember being in an incubator in the hospital. So that was something. That was
Wow.
definitely a start. And but I would say that what's the most striking memory or awareness or thought about my childhood was I was always in search of the truth. I was always a curious kid. I would go to friends' houses, and my one friend would be Jewish, one friend would be Buddhist, one friend might be Christian, one might be an atheist, one might, and I was always like, tell me about that. Why do you do that? What is that? What does that mean? And then I was an artist and a musician, and so I would go and I would work with a piano. Like I remember our one piano teacher was this old guy, Mr. Goody. And I didn't like the other teacher. She was like this big German woman that was like, "We must do the scales." I hated scales, but Mr. Goody would come in and he would play the boogie woogie. And I would be like, "Show me how to do that." I just wanted to play. I just wanted to jam. And I wanted to understand like where he came from and music and why was that. And the same with the artists when I would talk. So I was a very curious kid. And I was in a very much a way an ugly duckling, meaning I was the oddball in my family. I was both the most creative, the most curious, and ultimately the most successful early on, even because my mom put me in like a special educational thing to discover that I had a genius IQ and all this stuff. So it was a really interesting childhood,
Wow.
but I didn't feel like I belonged, and that's an important piece. I wanted to belong. I was curious. I wanted to learn about everything, devoured books, sci-fi, coding, took apart everything I could take apart, much to the dismay of my parents, from computers when they finally came to VCRs to sprinkler systems to anything mechanical. I took it apart to know how it worked and then put it back together sometimes. Sometimes there was just a pile of parts and I just went a little too far and couldn't figure out how to put it back together. But I was always taking things apart and putting them together physically and conceptually, intellectually, creatively. But I was alone a lot. I felt alone. I felt odd. I even in my teenage years was very philosophical and I used to just have these bouts of like affirming my friends. I would just be like, man, you're so aw-" and I would just affirm them, tell them all the amazing things. And I remember one of my friends going, they coined it the love bomb. And it was like they didn't know what to do with it. They would make fun of me and all of that. And at a very early age, I remember I never felt like my dad respected me, and he would take my art stuff, throw it out, tell me I should be a businessman, and he was trying to protect me. And I have a great relationship with him now. But I remember I wanted him to help me. I knew there was more inside of me. I knew there was a reason I was here. That was what was driving the curiosity, to know myself, to know what I'm here to be, to do and I wanted to have a relationship with my dad where he could guide me in doing that, and he instead just didn't understand it. And again, to be very clear, now he really respects it, and it's inspired him in his own ways. But at the time, he wanted me to have something to fall back on. Artists live below the poverty level. You have to be a businessman, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. While at the same time, my mom was like, "You can do anything you put your mind to." I'm like, "That's not helping, Mom." I mean, it's like, "Thank you for like supporting me, but I need somebody to tell me what is that thing." And so that started at a very young age the core question of my life, which was I knew there was something more to me and by extension to everybody. And I had the question, what am I really made of or made for? What am I really here for? What is my work, my purpose? And that became the central driving question of my life. And ultimately now it's what have helped hundreds of thousands of people do, is to answer that question that goes all the way back to the Oracle of Delphi, when it was a woman, by the way, and it wasn't an affirmation, it was a warning. And she said, know thyself. You better know yourself or else. So that was my journey, was trying to know myself. And it led to many lonely periods, isolated periods. When I eventually, which you touched upon, as I grew up and I had a near-death experience while doing a movie as an actor in Jamaica, and it cracked me open, and I pulled out of society and I became a monk. I left so much family, friends, world behind because there just wasn't rapport. People, my friends thought I had freaked out. My brother thought I'd gotten a lobotomy. I was no fun anymore. My mom was worried, thought I joined a cult. My dad, we already talked about. So it was very isolating because I was such an oddball, so to speak, at least in that culture that I had grown up in. And so I had to walk a singular path for a while until I more fully knew myself, more fully embodied it. And then, and this is an interesting thing, was that then one by one, family came back, but meeting me at a higher level. In fact, inspiring my mom to get on a spiritual path, inspiring my brother to get on a conscious growth path, inspiring, ultimately being of supporting my father and healing the relationship with his daughter. And so one by one, family came back stronger than ever, and also a whole new community of friendships and colleagueships that were meeting me at a higher level. But it was very difficult to walk that path. And you'll see that if you, as you've done many interviews, probably you've heard people that have had the courage and sometimes the craziness to actually dare to be themselves.
No,
And
it's too and far between, unfortunately, that people don't aren't self-aware of their greatness and what they can be. Yet they go out and they constantly people please, they constantly give away all their energy, they keep very little for themselves.
yeah,
They develop a tribe of people that are energy vampires in business, in their
true.
careers, in their family, right? It really is great to hear this. That's why I love the origin, because your discovery, you talk even from Mr. Goody, you talked about him, and
I have not talked
I
about
write notes, I put down bullet points all over here already because you made me smile so often, right?
It's
Which is
funny.
like,
I've never talked about Mr. Goody on a podcast or interview, and I've probably done thousands at this point. So
that's
that's pretty
awesome.
cool.
Thank you.
That was a great
Thank
memory.
you.
I remember just one little
Go
detail.
ahead. Yeah.
He taught in this piano shop, and it was stacked with pianos everywhere. And you had to wend your way through parts,
Stacks of books.
stacks of things and pianos, and it was a very narrow, and then all the way back into this little almost crawl space with a upright piano and just enough room to squeeze in with, and Mr. Goody was sitting there and play and be taught, like encased in stacks of pianos and piano parts and things. And I would play in that little thing. And I just remember that. I haven't had that memory for long. It was really a special space to
Well, he
go.
drove your passion instead of keeping it on. And the reason I say that is I look back at when I was younger and I was taking classical guitar, and the teacher I had, her name was Dorothy, super nice lady, but we did not connect. Her, it was
Mhm.
always about scales and perfection.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
never just go ahead and try, let's do it, let's
exactly.
jam, let's figure it out. And she drove me away from wanting to play the guitar.
That was what
And
happened with my German piano teacher. Yeah. Nothing against
well,
German piano teachers. I'm sure they're very great and
I
precise.
get
And
it.
now
I
I
get it.
actually wish I knew more about like musical theory and things like that, because she could have probably taken me there. Whereas I still have the passion and the love for it that Mr. Goody installed and instilled.
Which is awesome to hear, right? Again, I'm
Yeah.
not against my former, I don't even know if she's still alive. It's been so long. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, again, commonalities. You talked about, and I love connecting with other people's origin stories. Obviously, my listeners that have been with me for the last 5 years have heard lots about different circumstances. But one of the things you also mentioned that my listeners have never heard, I used to be that kid too. I went through electronics engineering technology. I got in Canada here, went to college for it, graduated from it. Then I got into computers. And I used to be that kid, and my parents would get upset. I'd take things apart. Sometimes they could get it back
Yeah.
together. And that's why I smiled so big when you said
Yeah.
sometimes it didn't get back together. Oh my
It was
gosh. It
just
just,
parts just strewn around me in the middle of the room.
oh yeah.
Oops.
So
We might need a
I
new
get,
blender, Mom.
I get it. It's just back to what I was saying. Sometimes things happen for us, not to us. And I think we're destined to have a conversation, my friend. We have
Yes.
so much in common. But yeah, I won't go over the other bullet points here because there's so much I want to cover today, and we have a very limited amount of time. So we're going to go into, but if there's anything else last you'd like to share about your origin before I go on.
I think it's just always interesting to look at the origins. That's why biographies are great. For me, is that what I eventually discovered with the emergence principle, the law of emergence, that there's a seed of potential, a pattern of purpose in all of us. And it's also been called the daimon or the acorn theory, which is that the oak is in the acorn. And I talk about the acorn and the oak a lot in my book, Emergence. But that the clues of who and what we are and are really meant to be are there. They really are there in our childhood. And sometimes they show up in ways that are obvious. Sometimes they show up inverted, like the kid that was so scared and was always holding on to his mom's purse strings and nervous and grew up to become one of the greatest bullfighters. It was like at a deep level, his soul or his mind was aware one day he would be facing death on a regular basis. And so it's just interesting to look at that. So as I'm thinking about my own childhood and my own origin story, it's just really interesting to reflect that the conditions that appeared to be bad and hard, like you said, they were happening to me. My dad didn't give me what I needed. I was sad. I wanted my dad to be proud of me, but he never gave that to me, or so I thought. I wanted to have it be easy. I wanted to have friends and be liked, but I was kind of the oddball. And all of these things that were really painful, and I felt rejected. I felt abandoned in many ways, were the very conditions that forced the activation and the deep diving and the digging down to discover what I really was. Like in nature, the jack pine needs a forest fire. The forest fire melts the serotinous glue around the seed pods. They will not melt without a fire. And that conflagration opens them up, releases the progeny, allows for the birth of the new generation of that tree, opens the canopy, burns the detritus. It does so many amazing things without which that species and many species would fail to thrive and evolve.
Well, it
And
affects the animals too.
it affects the animals and everything when it's
Yeah.
natural in that way, and that the same thing happens in our own lives. The forest fires and the earthquakes and the tragedies and the abandon. Again, I don't wish it upon anybody, but I recognize that was happening for me. That core wound was really a core initiation. So it's just great to see it again and think of it again and remember just how true that principle is. And again, it also taught me because of all the pain and suffering, I had to understand what was the deeper meaning of it all. And it didn't just teach me what the meaning of it all was. It showed me there is a mechanics to our own evolution, which is now what I write and teach about. Like I like to say to people, the workshop you've been living is the one you will one day be giving.
It's true, though. I completely agree. And I smile again because the segment I was going to go into is the law of emergence, right? Let's
There you
talk
go.
about it. So you did a great job thus far already talking about it. So let's dive into it some more. One of the things I referenced was the fact of the law of attraction, right?
Yeah.
It's mentioned about the fact, and those listening, the law of attraction, things like The Secret have their place, but without action, you're just wasting your time reading that book or listening to anything to do with the law of attraction. People take it out of context. They don't know how to utilize it properly within their 6 inches, in my opinion. So I was glad I read that about your own stuff and regarding like what is the difference? You
Yes.
explain it. What's the difference between the law of emergence versus the law of attraction? Because this is your specialty.
Yeah, and I used to do talks, the unattractive side of the law of attraction, and deal with that. And basically, I had been trying to improve my self-help, self-improvement for many years before I had this breakdown, near-death experience. First, I almost died of an overdose. And that was, I'd spent maybe a decade in self-improvement, fix, change, heal myself, fix, change, heal myself, attract. And it was like digging myself out of a hole. The more I dug, the deeper in the hole I got. And I could describe all the reasons my life was messed up. When I was 10 and I showed my dad the report card and he saw all A's and a B and was like, "What's with the B, son?" I could tell you my story, but it wasn't the only thing it was improving was my ability to describe why I was so screwed up. It wasn't actually making me feel better. I was more frustrated. I was more because I was so focused on what's wrong with me? Why is this not working? And always coming from lack, always coming from I'm not enough and I just need to be more, do more, etc. So that drove me to drink, drugs, and overdose. And then I came out of that and I was an actor and I was starring in a movie in Jamaica. And then I had the near death experience. And out of that, without going into all the details, I was caught in a coral reef underwater. Nobody knew I was there. And there was a moment where I knew I wasn't going to get out. I was done. I was exhausted. Night was falling. I was out in the middle of the ocean. I was done for. And and then in the moment, I tried to negotiate with God. I was like, please, I promise I'll go to church on Sunday. Get me out of here. But the universe wasn't playing. Let's make a deal. And there was a moment where I knew I wasn't going to make it. And all that was left was surrender. I had nothing left and I let go. And in that moment, there was a flash of light. And I saw that the self I'd been trying to fix, change, heal, and improve was a fiction. He was an amalgamation of parental fantasy, peer pressure, societal conditioning, and nothing I would ever do would ever make him enough. That the nature of him was limitation, lack, not enoughness, etc. But in the midst of that, there was another self, and he had never been damaged or diminished. And so he didn't need to be fixed. And he was already whole and complete. And so he could not be improved upon. Self-improvement to that self was an oxymoron. And again, this was a flash. I didn't have all these words. I just experienced it. And in the next moment, I was out of the coral reef standing on this piece of coral, the one and only piece I could see or not see, but the only piece I could have stood on. And I still don't know how I got there. I was trapped underwater in what looked like a booby-trapped tomb in an Indiana Jones movie with spiked coral everywhere it would have just skewered me if I breathed too deeply or if I went down, fire coral everywhere. There was no way out. And somehow, after that flash, I was standing outside. I had somehow grabbed something or done something, but I still don't quite know how. So I survived that ordeal, but it shattered something in me. The man that swam in was not the one that swam out. And everything was so luminous, I didn't really know how to make sense of things anymore. And so I pulled out of society. I became a monk. We won't go into the monastery life. That would be for a different episode maybe, but it was a short stint. But I ended up still staying monastic for a couple years in my apartment, got rid of TV, got rid of news, got rid of a lot of stuff, and went on this deep journey. And that's where one day I saw an acorn and and I remember I couldn't read any of the religious books. I was curious as a kid, but when I tried to read them as an adult, it was all nonsense to me. After this experience, I went back, took them. I think the Bible was a doorstop. And I think I had used Buddhist things to balance out something for my TV or something. I was not using the stuff anymore. But suddenly I could read it. I understood it. I saw how it was the same teachings across all religions. And it just something had shifted. And then I saw this acorn and I saw that the oak was already in the acorn. The pattern of the oak, the frequency of the oak in the quantum field, if you understand quantum physics and potentiality or platonic forms, All of a sudden, it was like, and I saw seeds everywhere. And I saw that everything comes from a seed. Every person, every animal, every plant, even I would say, and I saw the whole galaxy, the whole universe. And evolution is not a process of coming from nothing to something. It's a process of what was already involuted, the pattern, the seed. When the conditions are a match for that pattern, when they're congruent, when they're in integrity with what's in the seed emerges. The acorn is not an inadequate oak tree. It's a perfect acorn. But the acorn doesn't go out and attract an oak or achieve an oak or put a bunch of oak pieces together and build an oak. It surrenders to the soil. And in this case, because it's indigenous, nature does its job of creating the condition that is a match for that seed. That's why different climates, different seeds, etc. And then it emerges. It was already there. And it shattered my whole paradigm of how we're meant to grow. I realized most of my effort to achieve, to attract, to make something happen was total resistance to what was already trying to happen naturally. And when I shifted from making it happen to being more like a gardener or a farmer of my soul, meaning a gardener doesn't take a seed and go, how can I make a tree or a plant? It doesn't go, how can I make it happen? It says, how can I create the conditions that make it welcome? What is this seed? First, I got to know what it is, because maybe it needs shade and I'm giving it sun. Maybe it needs sun and I'm giving it shade. Maybe it needs a lot of water, a little water, this much food, this kind of food. If you don't know what the seed is, it's a crapshoot, and you probably end up with nothing growing. So you got to know what the seed is. And then you have to now find out and create the condition that is in service of that seed, is a match for that, is integrated or integral to it. So that's what I became for myself. As I said earlier, like the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself. And I saw that the first and most important principle is we got to know who we are. And then instead of me trying to make stuff happen, I was like, let me just remember and know what I am, what I'm made of, what I'm made for. And now let me design my life to be increasingly supportive of it, to be a match to it emotionally, physically. If I'm a polar bear and I've been living in the desert, no wonder my life sucks. No wonder I'm not thriving. If I'm meant to be if I'm a bobcat and I'm living in the snow, whatever the case is. So I began to design my life, not radically, but it also meant certain things I let go of and certain things I doubled down on. And I went from being broken, literally suicidal, to living in a one-room flat, to within a year after that revelation, that insight, to moving into a beautiful townhouse, launching my dream mission, making six figures, falling in love, who I eventually married and had children. Like my whole life just went a quantum leap. And that's where I began to go out and teach. Suddenly I was invited here, there, and what are you doing? How does that work? And it was during the time of Law of Attraction heyday. And suddenly I had a new principle, the Law of Emergence, and the idea that within you, everything is already there, waiting for you to discover it, waiting for you to honor it, to respect it, to value it. And again, we might get into this or not, but this is exactly what the great masters and philosophers of ancient times were teaching. Exact same principle. But I just began to teach it in a more modern parlance as the law of emergence. And things have just grown from there. And what we'll talk about later, I'm sure, is it's not just about how to reveal your purpose, your potential, how to thrive, how to flourish, and ultimately how to flower. It's when really terrible things happen, like the forest fires, the tragedies, the breakdowns, when you are coming from this principle in this place, they don't break you, they break you open, like the seed pod in the forest fire. And So it's what's allowed me to thrive, but also to survive through dark, dark, dark nights that would have taken down most people. When your child dies, you die with them. If you're lucky, because it's the most annihilating, unimaginable pain an individual can even you can't even imagine it. And and there's many experiences like that. Having my entire fortune stolen, people have jumped out of windows for less. But because of this work, it allowed me to shed the skin, to dive deeper, to become more loving, more compassionate, more inspired, more abundant. It doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt sometimes, but it allowed me to become more of me, not less. That's the law of emergence in a nutshell, or in an
Wow.
acorn shell.
Wow. That was, excuse me, that's amazing though. When I, in a synopsis to break it down for me or the listeners, we have everything inside of us, right? But like a seed, we need the proper environment, we need the proper fertilizer, we need the proper amount of good associations. Those listening,
Yes.
associations aren't just people. It's the television, it's news media,
Yes.
like you were saying,
Yes.
it's social media,
Yes.
it's what kind of books, what kind of music, everything ties
100%.
into our, what some people call a soul, whatever. Your flame inside becomes a bonfire if you give it what it needs. And you have
Exactly.
to realize that character building circumstances can be changed as long as you don't let the learned behavior of your past or current present life be the catalyst that keeps you stuck.
Yes.
Look for the catalyst that's going to unstick you. Look for the catalyst that's going to, or the people associations that are going to teach you that ABCs, right? Action, belief, consistency. That's what I live my life by, right? I have to have that ability to hold on to, because like you said, things still come at us, things still get tossed at us. How are you going to show up with that presentation of new information that's been thrown at you? Maybe it's a verbal altercation, maybe it's an email, whatever it is. How are you going to show up? Are you going to let it take you back to where you felt out of control? Right.
Yes.
So we're a working project. I'm going to work on myself to the day I take
Oh,
my last breath.
totally. We
Honestly.
are we are a work in
I love
progress.
what you had to share, though. I loved it. It was
Yeah,
great.
the one thing you said before also about
Yep.
that is what you also begin to learn is we have been conditioned to react to conditions, and conditions do not determine our destiny, our character does. And our character is made of habits. That's why Confucius said all men are equal. It is their habits that separate them. And our habits are made of what we do consistently. And what we do consistently is what we're committed to. And what we commit to is what we most value. And if you follow that train, you can see if you see honestly from before and after picture, before that moment, what I valued was unconscious values. It was safety or security or being enough or not looking bad. So that's what I was unconsciously committed to. And so if something bad happened or hard happened, my habits of reaction, my character was based on the wounded part of me or the part that didn't feel good enough or felt he was lacking or whatever. And that would just perpetuate more and more of that story. After that breakthrough of the law of emergence and understanding what's already in me, it shifted to asking a different question. Instead of before it was what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? Why are they being such a jerk? Why me, life, God, whatever. Now it was a different question. It was like, how would I respond from that seed? If I was that already, which I am, how would I respond here? So another way to say it is imagine you're already your future self, pull your future self into the present and ask, how would I respond if I was that individual? That's how the oak breaks through the acorn, not because it's acting like a little acorn reacting to the world, but because it's acting as an oak. It's coming from the oak of its being at the level that it can. I'm a very, very tiny oak, but this tiny oak is still going to be oaken, not acorning. And so as I oak, I bust open the acorn and I become a little flush of a tiny little seedling. And so the same thing is true here, is it's like the analogy of a plant. You put a plant in a little pot, it doesn't go and look at all the bigger pots and go, why don't I have a bigger pot? What's wrong with me? Why are they doing that? It goes, okay, here I am. But its seed, its pattern knows it's a tree. And so it acts like a tree in that little pot. And it doesn't act like a little tiny plant. And it starts digging its roots, extending its branches, looking for nourishment, turning to the sun, and it soaks up every bit of nutrient it can get. And what happens? It starts being as much of a tree that it can be in that little pot. What happens? It outgrows that plant, that pot, and it gets replanted in a bigger pot. And then it does it again until it gets set free in the field where it's a full-blown tree. That's because it's acting from its seed, its pattern, its true nature, which is I'm a tree, I'm an oak, I'm a flower, whatever. So when I got that shift, it began to shift it so that I was, like you said, part of it was, okay, well, I know what I am. Now let me design my life so that it's congruent with that. And the important thing to understand is nature is indigenous, meaning it is beholden to where it's planted, but we are endogenous. That means we are like a walking greenhouse. We create our own conditions, not just externally, but internally, mentally, emotionally, where we put our attention versus here versus there. Where attention goes, energy flows. All of that is under our control. Where do I put my attention? Where do I focus? What do I think about versus not? What do I do versus not do? What a feeling do I entertain versus not? All of that is in our capacity. And when you understand that you are self-effulgent, you create your own light, you create your own nutrients, no matter what side of the tracks you're planted on, no matter what size pot you're planted in, if you are willing to act from you're not coming, you're not on your way to a better something. The branch isn't on its way to the tree. The wave isn't on its way to the ocean. The sunbeam isn't on its way to the sun. Everything emerges from. And so if you begin to act from what you really are, even a little bit, and you design a life, as you said and I say, not on accident, but on purpose, intentionally, not perfectly, but as a practice. If I really loved myself, if I really believed I was what I want to be, what I feel inside of me that wants to come out, if I understood that desire means of the sire, of the stars, of the Father, of the Creator, and that desire in me is not something I need to go out and get, but it's something in me trying to get out. If I was willing to believe that just a little bit, faith of a grain of mustard seed, how would I treat myself today? How would I show up today? What would I start doing? What would I stop doing? Just a little bit. A little leaf pokes through the concrete, a little seedling flushes through the seed, and you feel it. And then evolutionarily, we were adapted for this. It kicks in neurochemicals, and you feel good. You feel inspired. You feel a little rush of serotonin or some other neurochemical, and you have more momentum to do the next thing the next day. So that's that, and you discover little by little it coming from you. And I'll finish with this, just on, not finish, but on this idea. The true meaning of abundance is not, this is the difference again between attraction and emergence. We're playing on that subject. Attraction is the idea you're lacking something, but if you think the right thoughts, it'll come to you. Emergence is the understanding that everything you desire is a signal of something already in you. It's the baby kicking the pregnant mother. It's like something's in me that wants to come out. And it requires me, as we already said, feed the baby, give it the right nutrition, and act from that. The pregnant mother doesn't start going, oh my God, I want a baby so bad. And then why won't anybody love me and help me have a baby? No, she starts acting like a mother. She starts building the nursery. She starts doing Kegels. She starts doing whatever. She's acting. That's why faith without works is dead. Just a vision without a plan is a fantasy. A plan that's not on your calendar is wishful thinking. But it's not acting to make it happen. This is the big important distinction, because we all know about, in the success self-help world, action, action, action. The problem is a lot of action is coming from lack and limitation and fear. And if I just do, well, if you just do, you're going to have a bunch of do. You have to act from the faith, from it is so, I am, I can, it's already happening. And as a result of that, it emerges. Like a fruit tree doesn't sit there and wait for birds to come around and hang fruit on its branches. The fruit emerges from the tree. So real abundance and even real character and success is the degree to which you allow more of you to come out, right? At the end of the day, the end of the year, the end of a lifetime, your measurement of success and abundance will not be in how many possessions you've attracted or achieved, but how much more possession and expression you have of yourself. That's real success. That's real fulfillment. That's real wealth. And that's all within your power, no matter where you've come from or what you're facing.
In a nutshell, for those listening or watching, one of the things that most of mankind are very lacking is awareness, self-awareness, to
Yes.
know that you have the potential inside of you. Now, what do you do?
Yes.
Oh,
Exactly.
I think I can do that. Maybe another day I'll think about it again.
Yes.
They don't necessarily, they're not lazy. So many people get labeled by the terminology, though, that person's lazy. Sometimes it's circumstances of their learned behavior from their origin
100%.
to where they are now, and nobody's ever mentored them to say,
100%.
hey, what? You can be that acorn. We can give you the right environment so that you will sprout, so that eventually
Yes.
you'll be oaking, right? And not
Yes.
unicorning, right? So
Not
again,
exactly. Not acorning, right?
acorning, pardon me.
You want a
Acorning.
unicorn. No, you can unicorn.
Yeah, okay. I'll just put that out of my bald head. But we've got so much more to discuss, and we got 10 minutes left. So I'm wondering if we just continue on, because I have a segment I wanted to talk about your new book, A Whole New Human, and yeah, so much more in depth. I'm used to people. This is not a slight. This is a congratulations. Thank you very much. You're very articulate. Not to say any of my other guests aren't, but you're very into the flow of the conversation. And I don't want to start into something more and then feel like we're rushing through it. So at this point, I think we should continue. This conversation of Law of Emergence can go on for its own episode.
For
right?
sure.
So we can continue to talk about
Everything
that.
comes from the emergence principle ultimately. When you
Of
understand that
course. But I want the
principle alone.
listeners, the listeners to know about your other projects, though, your other books, and you're just too much of, you're not coal, you're that diamond that I want to make sure gets the ability to shine, right?
Thank you.
Obviously you've been on so many shows. You don't need me to make your case for what you offer, but my listeners deserve to have the best experience of you. And thus far, it's been amazing. It's just that, yeah, literally we're on segment 2 and I go up to segment 6. And yeah, it's not because I don't find the fact that I just don't want to rush that part.
Totally.
Right. So
I'm with
let's
you, man.
touch some. So I would love to, listeners, I'm asking them right now. I'd love to get us booked in as soon as possible to do a part 2. We'll finish off the last 9-10 minutes here in regards to just asking you some more questions about the Law of Emergence. And
Sure.
you mentioned about your son, right? You lost your son. I know that's really different from what I went through with loss. I lost my granddaughter. We were so close. She was 4 years
Mm.
of age when she passed away in 2017. And it affected me, my friend, a lot. It affected my business. It affected I regressed. I don't know if
Oh
that's
yeah.
the right word, but I regressed to a point where my self-awareness had gone away, the things I had done through personal development, the different processes. I had to find myself and get myself back. And 2017 was an epiphany moment when I got into 2018, looking back and realizing what I've been living a pity party, right? What good does that do me? Not necessarily the people around me. I needed to heal me, because we really can't serve others without serving ourselves and healing and understanding and having that awareness. And I literally, my listeners have heard me talk about this lots, but I literally coach and teach on never having a bad day. I haven't had a bad
Mhm.
day now in 8 years, and people say that's impossible. You've had to have death around you with your clients. And yeah, I said, absolutely. But I always know that it's never a bad day, because there's so much good things that I'm discounting, which is
Yes.
affecting my 6 inches between my ears, which is affecting my inability. It's making me have an inability to take action, to take ownership, and to stop letting outside influences, again, go back to the associations. I let things come back into my life that weren't good,
Yeah.
right? And I literally slid. But the reason I bring this up is because I don't care where you are in your life, those listening or watching, you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, put a band-aid on the boo-boo, take that first baby step, like Derek was talking about. You got to start somewhere, right? And that is the first thing, is being aware and being the willing,
Yes.
right? People hate when I say that. Well, when I talk to people, whether it's on my finance side or I'm just coaching them, depending on where they are in the world, I'll say to them, are you the willing? You told me all this stuff, and that's great. Now, are you willing to go through the tough stuff? Are you willing to have that? Oh my gosh, I've never really acknowledged that. Now I'm acknowledging it, and it really hurts. Feed off that pain. Doesn't mean it
Yeah.
has to hold you back. Use it as a catalyst, as an
Yes.
extra piece of wood on the fire. I don't know what you feel about that, but I'd love you to share more about, again, sorry for your loss. I don't know how you lost your son. I can't compare the losing a child as a grandchild, but yet
Well, it's still
you
pretty
feel
intense. I
that.
mean, that means you had a child who lost a child.
Yes, my oldest
And
daughter has regressed. Has never been the same,
yeah,
right? Her
so
her and
as
her
a
and her other.
parent who had a
Yeah.
child lose a child, that's gets pretty darn close. And you know, it's not a competition. Some
Well, I
people,
wasn't trying to make that.
no,
I
no, I
was.
know. I'm just saying
Oh,
for
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
else. So if you break your toe really bad and your friend breaks their leg, they both really hurt. So what are you going to do? Some people lose their animal, their dog or their cat, and they're just devastated for a long time because it was like a child to them. But my son he was my greatest love. And I mean, I have another child as well. I have a daughter who became a boy. So that was also another journey, which was I lost my son and then I lost my daughter in a different way.
Wow.
And but I love my child, whatever form they take, as long as if I can be with them, I'm good. But yeah, it was devastating and annihilating beyond what you can ever put words to. But you could probably begin to put some words because you've experienced some very painful loss as well. And I cried every day, didn't miss a day for 3 years straight. And he was in his 20s, so he was an adult. And in some ways, which was even harder, I was very grateful that I almost got a quarter of a century with him. But there's also that much more of a relationship. And one of the things that, to be apropos to this conversation, that was in some ways almost more devastating than his death was that he was right on the verge of living his dreams. And he was a musician and a DJ, and he had wanted so badly to finally break out. And he'd gone through so many struggles. He finally was about to go play at a big festival. It was a big deal. And I'd never heard him more joyful, more excited, and more happy. His dreams were finally coming true. And he died before he got a chance to play. And it was like, it put a fire in me on a whole new level of I will not let anybody die with their music in them if I can help it. And so that's that same thing. There's a fire in us all. There's a song in us all. There's a life and a love and a purpose and a service and an activation of potential within all of us. And my belief is that is the meaning of our life, and the meaning of life is to actualize and give forth the fullest possible expression of your true nature and potential. The flower blooms, the tree branches, the birds sing, we're here. In fact, in Sanskrit, the word human means the dispenser of divine gifts. And so we came people when you were a kid. If you started to feel all into yourself, somebody might say, "Who do you think you are? God's gift to the world, man." And it's like now I would say, "Yeah, who do you think you are?" Don't you know that? So we really are a gift, and we've come already fully loaded, factory loaded with gifts, talents, abilities, with so much potential to love and to serve and to bless and to up level and uplift and to make a person's day better. And in fact, you want to know a recipe for feeling better? Serve somebody. You want to know a recipe for feeling worse? Just focus on your own stuff and problems. I'm not saying don't love yourself and serve yourself. You need to do that. You need to take the oxygen mask first. But we are ultimately at our best when we are putting all of our fruits, all of our flowering in service of something else. That was the biggest breakthrough for my son. It put such a fire in me. And then the other most important piece, which gets around to the emergence piece again, is and the flip of the tragedies and the losses and the shattering of forms and things that we think was a terrible thing that happened to us. One day I was walking and I was feeling the wave of grief really, really, really badly. And all of a sudden something shifted in me, and this voice spoke in me, and it said, "When the form that held your love shatters, the love is not lost, it is liberated." And suddenly I saw the love that was held in the form of my son, in the form of father and son. And that form was shattered, but the love was still there, and it was expanding, and it filled me. And I began to just sob, but with love, and then laugh. I looked like a crazy person. And the expanded, 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 expanded until I had the experience of not just the love of a father for his son, but the love of father and son, like archetypal, mythic level love. And it began to shift everything in my life again, that when the form of something shatters, if you're focused on how is this happening for me? What is the opportunity for me to be more as a result of this, not less? You will become more. When the chicken is stuck in the little egg, it doesn't know anything but that little egg. That's its world. And it's a big world at first, but then it becomes a small world because the chicken grows, the baby chick. And then it runs out of food. Now it's starving and it's cramped, and its world is full of all of its refuge and poop, and it smells. So it's cramped, it's stuck, it's smelly, it's hungry. I mean, this life sucks, or so it seems. But as a result, instead of focusing on why me, why is this happening to me, it's not fair, that little baby chick intuitively and instinctively starts focusing on where is the nourishment, where is the good. Let me just look for every little bit of morsel of good, of nourishment. Let me just focus on getting nourished. And it just does that. And it starts pecking, looking for every little last bit of food. And it feeds itself. But as a result of focusing on where's the opportunity, where's the value, where's the opportunity, how can I keep being me and keep living, it strengthens its neck and wing muscles. It strengthens its lungs. It gets stronger, more strength than it needs in a little egg, and it starts to crack the shell. All of that happens because it focuses on where's the opportunity, where's the good, where's the blessing. and it cracks the shell and it's liberated into a much larger world. So its world ends just before it ends fully. It's liberated into a larger world. If it did what we do, why me? What's wrong with me? Whose fault is it? It would have just died inside that little egg and thought that was the whole world. But in fact, there was a much larger world. And so I would leave people with that idea that whatever you've been through, whatever you're going through and growing through, remember whatever seeming form in your life, your lack of money, your smaller bank account, your struggling body or relationship or business or lack of business, or as you move into the AI age and business loss and fear, just remember you're inside of a small egg right now. You're inside of a box, and that what's happening is something more, a bigger life, a bigger love, a greater understanding or expression of wealth and abundance or health, etc., is actually what's behind the breakdown, the loss, the lack, or the limitation. Life is trying to emerge more. But because of resistance, because of limited beliefs, because of that's just the way it is, it shows up in your life as a pain, as a crisis, as a problem, as a breakdown. But the meaning of it is more of you is trying to break through. And I invite you just put your attention on, don't ask why me, why is this happening, who did it, whose fault, but ask what is the larger life trying to emerge in me now? What is the bigger self trying to emerge in me now? Who am I really being called to be, and who would I be if I was on the other side of this? And then act from that place as a practice, a little bit every day, and do that between now and the next time we talk. And I promise you, things will begin to break through and emerge.
Oh, I love it. I want to respect your time because I know you have to get going. So I hope you'll come back on again very
I'd love
soon,
to.
like within days, so we can do a part two.
I would
To
love
wrap
it.
this, I appreciate that. And I will email you all the information so we can get that booked because I'm blown away and we've only gone through. I get what you're saying. Everything comes from emergence,
Yes.
but there's still everything you've done because of emergence deserves to have a spotlight on it, right?
Mm.
You deserve to have more of a spotlight on you. And I want to learn more. I'm going to be honest with the listeners. I've told them before. This is my show. I'm the professor bringing on a guest lecturer, somebody that's going to educate and teach me more to be better and
Yes.
grow. And
Yes.
guess what, listeners and people watching, you get to benefit from the fact of my curiosity and
That's
the
right.
fact that I have an insatiable need to learn and grow. So we have so
That's
much.
where we're also brothers from another mother, for
I
sure.
agree. I agree. You know what? One last statement that when I just about interrupted you when you said let the music die inside. My kids have been telling me since they're younger, my clients, everybody says, why do you always say that? You don't want the music to die inside of you. You don't even play music anymore. I said, you don't get it. Our life as a song, it gives
That's
off
right.
energy, it's a vibration, it's music. And that's why I've got my podcast, I've got my book, why I've got the things I've done, because it's a living legacy. I'm creating a living legacy,
Yes.
understanding that I don't want my music to be left behind. I want to be
Yes.
known generations from now by my great 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 grandkids. Hey,
Yes.
my great 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 grandpa was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right, so
Totally, man. Totally. I
anyway,
just I just
so
saw that. I just flashed and saw that actually.
oh,
And
I just
hey, the universe is called a universe. That means one song.
exactly. But you and I are so much alike. It's just, I really honestly love this, what you said, brother from another mother. So, Derek, I want to take this quick moment just because some people might not make it to the second episode. What's the best way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously people can go to my website, Derek Rydall, RYDALL.com. There's lots of free trainings on there. I give away 98% of my stuff. They can, of course, go to the Emergence podcast, or they can go to my YouTube channel, Derek Rydall, Legendary Life. There's dozens and dozens of hours of training and talks about what we've talked about and more. You can go down rabbit holes. I would start whatever one calls to you. You like YouTube, go there. You like podcasts, go there. You're on a podcast right now, you can just pop over to Emergence and check it out, or go to my site and get one of the free trainings that I give away. But
Awesome.
before we talk, I would encourage people to do that because we are entering into a brave new world. We'll talk about this our next time.
Yes,
It's
we will.
one of the most existential periods in human history, one of the greatest identity crises we'll ever face. So tune in next time because we need to prepare so
Oh,
that we make
absolutely.
a big difference in this brave new world.
100%. For those new to the Give a Heck podcast, go to giveaheck.com, go to the podcast at the top, the menu option. You will see detailed show notes in regards to this episode and all of his social media links, his website links. There'll be chapter summaries. There'll be everything there. It's a full meal deal. It's not just a slight scratch at the surface. I take this very serious. If you've listened to this, you deserve to be able to follow up on it and it not just become an afterthought once this recording ends. So giveaheck.com, best place to go. You'll be able to find everything you need to do in regards to Derek. Derek, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
We'll get in touch with one another after the fact. And remember, people listening, right? To everyone, until next time, live life on purpose and not by accident. Remember, it's never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.